Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our GP data migration options today.
Yes, happy Tuesday. So we may as well touch on this because our audience is people that are thinking about moving to BC from GP. We don't have to worry about getting our data from too many sources. We just need to know that we want to pull data, harvest data from GP to get it into BC. Now, we have a couple migration tools that are available to do this. First off, Microsoft provided a migration tool that can be used to migrate your data from Dynamics GP to Dynamics 365 Business Central. However, there's a couple caveats to that. One is that it has to be on GP 2015 release 2 or higher in order for this to work. If you're on GP 2013, for example, you would actually have to be migrated up to a higher level of GP in order for this to work. But as the slide I have here shows, you can move from your on-premise GP setup fairly easily to the cloud setup with Dynamics BC out there. You can see the various pieces that we have here. Now, the migration tool that is available works best for general ledger, accounts receivable, and accounts payable, what we refer to oftentimes as GLAPR. So you can move charts of accounts, you can move customers, you can move vendors. It does not work very effectively for inventory type stuff. Fixed assets don't move at this point very well or anything. And there are some things the tool will not move. So the tool would not move extender data that you have in your GP system, or if you have data fields that have been added to windows in GP other than the standard user-defined fields. Several GP windows have 2 user-defined fields on them. Those, the data can be moved. But if you have additional data fields, other customizations that perhaps the TM group provided, those data fields won't get moved by this tool. And then smart lists, this one gets asked a lot, but the smart lists that people have out there in Dynamics GP that, pull together various bits of information, those do not migrate over to BC either. Now we know that smart lists really have been kind of effectively replaced with account schedules, unless you go for the PopDoc product where you can have more traditional looking smart lists available. As I say, there's some things that the tool will not move at all, and there's some things that it doesn't move very effectively. But you can move all your GL account numbers, all your AR customers, AP vendors. But again, notice I typed in all right there for each of these. So if you had 45,000 GL account numbers, but you're only using 5,700 of them, you're going to have all 45,000 move over to the new system. Same thing for customers or vendors. You may have a large amount of customers or a large amount of vendors, many of which you may no longer be transacting business with. The tool will move all those over. It doesn't allow workable filtration of that. So you say, well, what good is the tool then? Well, again, if you're a straightforward GL, AR, and AP type organization, and you don't have a lot of other data in the system, extra customers, vendors, or thousands and thousands of account numbers, the tool could move it over. It can be a very effective way to get that data in for a very reasonable cost of transition. But I'm going to guess that many of you are not in the boat where that would work to move the easy stuff. So for some GP installations, a fair amount of them, it's kind of desirable when you're changing systems from GP to Dynamics BC to clear out inactive or old customers or vendors. You might like to reduce the chart of accounts from 45,000 or even 5,700 down to 1,500 or less that you use. And you may even want to have a new and improved chart of accounts where you decide, because of dimensions that are available in BC, and we covered dimensions a couple webinars back on this, you can have dimensions that are able to provide some of the information that perhaps you used your old GP chart of accounts to provide for you. You may not need a 3 or 4 segment chart of accounts that comprises 21 characters anymore. You might get by with just natural accounts and you've got dimensions set up for departments or regions. In that case, you would be better off extracting the information from Dynamics GP, and the TM group can help you with that. Extract the data, clean it up, get rid of old customers or vendors you don't want, reduce your chart of accounts, or develop your new one and import that. And you could import this with dimensions added to the chart of accounts right then. We can also identify and move extender data or custom data field information depending on where it might, if it's going to be needed. We would look to say, okay, is there a place already existing in Dynamics GP where this data should go? Or do we need to have some other repository and other tables set up to hold this data that links and can bring it in depending on your organization? In those cases, this would become more of a consulting exercise with the TM group as well, where we could go in, work with you on this, and you're not only going to get a new state-of-the-art cloud-based accounting system, but you may have one that strips away a lot of legacy data and setups that you may no longer need and be a little more streamlined as well. So that's a big positive for that. In Business Central, there are some ways that you can get data into the system using, and this is where it would be either the TM group could help you set this up, or we could train you a little bit and you can go through and do this yourself. Because if we're not able to use a data migration tool, we know we can always fingertip it in. Nobody wants to do that. Or we can import this, because as we've seen throughout the webinar series here, Business Central is extremely interlaced with using the Microsoft Office solutions, particularly Excel. So in this company here called Sandbox One, I went and I manually created a customer, the TM group. I just set this in here, put some information in, had to create a payment terms code, some things like that I've got. I just set these up in here. Why? Because I can export this and provide a template for putting information in. So in this case, I've got this customer out here. It is set up. I could do the same thing with a vendor. I only need to have one set up. So now I can go, and as we're used to looking up here, I can go to configuration packages. And in the configuration packages, I can make up any variety of configuration packages that I might need. In this case, I created one for customers, and it has a variety of information that goes with it. And specifically, I went into table 18 for the customer. I say, okay, I know I've got a customer out there. I'm interested in table 18, and we'll come back and touch on this a little bit more. And I say, I would like to export some data from the selected table. Now, I only selected one table. I didn't select these others. It'll create an Excel worksheet for me. So here is specifically a customer table. It has the information that was exported. And the reason that this was important to have was because this will give me the exact format for the information that I have to move in. It also contains a lot of things that I don't see on this window here. Like, for example, this says it belongs to customer import. That's my configuration package. And it's the customer table, and it's table 18. It shows here a customer number that I had manually assigned, and then it shows the name, address, various information here. I assigned it to a customer posting group. I had payment terms. So this gives me a template of information, and all I have to do is take this template and I can populate it with similar information and be able to import that back into the system. So right now, if I went into my Dynamics BC info, I had a couple of these I wanted to be prepared here. So here's my customer import. There is my first customer that I had set up. Here are customers that I pasted in. And where did this information come from? I extracted this from a Dynamics GP installation and pasted it in here and made sure that I filled in well, I didn't have phone numbers. I actually goofed up on that one, but I have the payment terms, all this information for the address, the zip codes, and so on, all kinds of information out here in a format that can be imported. Now, I also have, because I ran this customer import 2 version 1 a bit ago, it has a bunch of other templates available in it. In fact, there's a series of them. So I can go and create a significant amount of template information here to be able to move in, but I'm simply just focusing on the customer at the moment. So now I'm going to go ahead and close this one right here. I'm going to come back here and say, okay, I make sure I've got my customer selected, and I say that I would like to import from Excel. Here's my customer code of customer import. Here's my table name, things that we just saw on the worksheet I had open. So now I'm going to go to the customer import 2. And this says that it located for this package and the table, it located that there was a bunch of information out there. I say, great, I want to import this. So this imports this information. It tells me that there's 30 records in that package. Slide down here so I can slide over. It says there's a whole bunch. There's only one database record at the moment. That's because of that first one that I put in there. And I also have the ability, because this was the second time today I did this, I marked this to delete table records before processing. So it's actually going to stamp out that C1000 and replace it. But anyway, I've got the information identified there. Now I can come in and apply data. It inserted these records. There were no errors found. And so you say, great, what's this mean? Well, now if I go back to customers, I can see that I've got all these customers in. It was that simple to get them in. I can go into any one of these. It'll show me information here. You'll notice that my phone numbers are blank. Darn. Well, if I were to go back in and open my customer 2, and let's just use the TM Group's phone number, and I were to just copy that down for all of them, for example, I'll now save this, exit out. I'll come back in here. And if I'm back here, I can say, okay, I want to import that table, the same Excel file with the information, but I'm also going to delete the records before processing because I want to refresh and improve what I've got, really. Again, it says it found data. I say I'd like to import this. Yeah, I need to apply that. It's reminding me. So I'm just going to click right here to apply it. And so now if I go back to customers in Hospice Atlanta, for example, I now have a phone number appearing. So you see, this is very straightforward to do that. So therefore, I could do the same thing with vendors, chart of accounts. I can keep at it till I get it right. What's very useful too is that having these configuration packages allows me to go in and I can make a new configuration package if I want. Call it vendors. And this comes down and says, what tables would you like? Well, what tables are available here? Just by clicking on the ellipsis here, this will show me these are the tables that are available in the system. Now, any of you that have done very much with Dynamics GP may have observed some of the table names like RM00101 or PM20000, various things like that. Here, they're a little more English language looking to find things. So I could go in and say, I want to get the vendor table. And this will just, I'm all set up. I could go in and do something. Now, if I had a vendor set up in here, I would be able to export that and know that it works perfectly fine. But I can go in and I can, in this package, Sure, it'll also tell me that city and zip codes are related to the field, so I could grab both of those. And I didn't add those properly. I'm just going to grab payment terms for right now to add to this one. And it'll populate these as we go. So in order to set this up, I could use a standard deck of tables, which the TM group has. We actually have a file that has a lot of the standard information, like currency information, country, region information, and we can use that to pre-fill a lot of these that way. But we can still go in and make our way through. So I could chunk my way through here and say, okay, I've got vendor import, it's saved. Now, if I go back, I could see that I've got a different import for customers versus vendors. Or I could have one startup package that has everything that's needed in it. Then it's a matter of you come in and you've got all these other questionnaires. Some of these are not ones that get used typically in everyone. This was just the dozen or so tables that I had, but you can have all of them built in and then import your data and you've got it to go. Now, what is also nice about this is you can create additional companies as well. So in Dynamics GP, for example, a lot of times the way we would set things up for people is we would create a company database. Folks would go in, we would do training, they would set things up. We might import some stuff, clients might import some stuff, wrangle around with it, and you get it the way you like it. And then the TM group says, okay, we can go ahead and we can clean these tables up here. So you've got all your master table data, the card data, for example, set up in there. That's all available and present. And then we've got a database, a company database that's available for use. We can then go and copy that. And it's a bit of a, I don't want to say laborious, but it is a process in order to be able to create an extra test database from that same information. We're able to go in here and there's some commands, and I'm not going to show that to you because right at the moment, because it just really doesn't matter. Well, I guess having said that, I can come in, and if I'm going to create a new company here, all I have to do is go up and say, let's make a new company. So I could create it new with no data if I wanted. I can add a user to it. And it'll churn and whiz and pop. This one is actually quite fast to create right here because the other companies are not large and no other users are in them. But this could take 10 or 15 minutes, the longest. I see it usually takes about 5 to 7, but this one's pretty quick. But it's this easy to create an additional sandbox company once you've got a company you like in order to go in and do testing. Or if you are an organization that has 15 company databases perhaps, then you can come in here and you can create those additional company databases once you've got one of them set up the way you like it. And you could actually, if the data that is in that company that's been set up, if that data needs to be replicated throughout, like same chart of accounts, that kind of thing, you could just go and copy. And where I selected create a new one with no data, I could have used one of the other options and it would have pulled data in from one of the other ones here. And here's my demo company available, ready for use. So it can be that straightforward to get data in. Now, you say, okay, I can pull a lot of this data with smart lists. Whether using Smart List Designer or Builder, you can get a lot of data. You can put a lot of data together and get it out and then move it in using the Excel import feature of the configuration packages. And it's repeatable. You can also, and I'm not going to go in right here in detail on it, you can even do mapping. So if you were changing your chart of accounts a little bit, perhaps adding an extra character or something to it, we can make mappings in here so that we could actually take the data and transform it as it's being pulled from your, if you will, your GP exported version, we can transform it into the BC imported version for chart of accounts, for example, to do that. And that can be set up. That's not a big deal. But what our experience has been is that most clients that are coming in to BC want to take the opportunity to clean up and perhaps recast their chart of accounts, clean up customers, clean up vendors, clean up inventory items, price levels and such like that, and then import all that stuff. So at the worst case scenario, someone may have gone in and created a customer, a vendor, an inventory item, a price level, a few of those things in order to be able to have a good template to export to paste the data into. And it's just not tough. But the reason that I like to go, and my colleagues do too, the reason we like to go and export, putting a customer or vendor in and export that out, it gives us the latest product version that is in use for that organization. It gives us all the fields that are available for that. So if there's if I had a template that I used a year ago and tried to use it this year, there may be some changes to the fields in it and it will not import correctly. So it's just easier and faster to go in and create something and make a template to export. But it can get them all into the Excel files and then go ahead and populate the information and move it in. And that was all I had to show here. So are there any questions that we have? All right, you asked about the data migration tool. Have a way to do that. A way to do what part exactly, please, Rosanna? So hoping to get a little more because that was a little while ago. I passed that. So I'm not certain exactly what was 10 minutes ago when I was talking. The data migration tool, as I indicated, works best for GL, AR, and AP. If you're taking what you've got, you want to move the whole thing in. It does not work well at this point with inventory and some of the others. All right, there you go. Without the user having to manually create. Yes, it can. It could move it in from GP into BC without the user having to manually create files. What might be suggested in that case is to plan that some additional work will be needed and perhaps migrate all of the information into a BC company. And then you could use the filters in the BC company to filter and leave out information that you don't want, and then create a second BC company and use those filters to pull over just what you want. So that would be a way to do this without the user having to manually create files, where you just bring everything that's available and then create a second company, use filters to extract the information from the first company, if you want to call it the import company, to move that over to where you may wish to be. Otherwise, you also have the option of going in and deleting information. You can filter stuff and look and delete, but then you'll have to touch many of those files as well. So it's a bit of a trade-off. I guess you have to look at each situation and see, am I better off moving in 1,500 customers and then use filters to identify the 400 or so that I think I could get rid of and then get rid of them? Or am I better off importing 1,100 from the get-go? It's kind of depends on your level of comfort with the system. If you would prefer to say I had 1,508 customers in GP and I see that I've got 1,508 customers in my import company, great. And then you could make changes. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Roger. We had one more question. I don't know if you saw it. Can the AR and AP agings be imported into BC as well?
Not really. We have not done it because it is extremely difficult. And this is the same thing we tell people going into GP from, say, QuickBooks or something, that trying to get history into a different accounting system is fraught with peril. We don't really like to move the history because it takes an incredible amount of consulting time to make sure that you've got the transactions to get them in. Or if you say, well, I could just repost all these, you still have to do a lot of work to get the information out and cleaned up and moved over. So a preferred method is to go and have the historical information pulled out and put it into tables, additional tables in like Solver or somewhere else where the data can be accessed and viewed, but it doesn't have to, you don't have to worry about it being fit to move in as a transaction into BC. Now, the type of history that we do move for people is if you've got a lot of open receivables or a lot of open payables, those could be moved in and posted in there, same as you could do net changes for the GL. You could put those in as entries and post them and let them flow through there, and you're able to get information. But still, we would, the most we really want to do that for is for GL net changes for reporting, as Ken noted there. And that one we do quite a bit. So we will move GL information in. We'll say, okay, the net activity for January 2021, net activity for February 2021, just a whole bunch of journal entries, and it pulls those in. But we're not interested in trying to get AR and AP transaction data in because it doesn't flow well and the data migration tool won't move that properly. Any other questions?
Nope, I think that answered all of our questions today.
But I just like to reiterate how simple it is to get the information in.
Oh, we have one more question coming in. So our
And
next question, Roger, is what is the most difficult thing to do during a migration?
spending the time necessary. Seriously, that's the, if you're doing a data migration that requires a user, that's some user interaction, making sure you've got the time to clean it up, that's usually the biggest problem. Otherwise, if you're using like the data migration tool, for example, then the problem with that is that it takes some amount of time, and we've never really been able to tighten down and figure out the amount of time that it takes to do that. So that would be using the data migration tool. It could take, 3 or 4 hours, or it could take 20 hours. And we've tested it, and it's taken a significant amount of time in some cases. Otherwise, it's just whatever the time that is necessary for someone to clean up data or extract data.
Great, thank you, Roger. That looks like the final question for today, but we will be sending the recording out. So if you think of more questions, you can just email Roger or I, and we will get those answered for you. So thank you, Roger, for presenting today. And thank you everyone for joining. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Oh, we just had, I think it ticked up one more. Oh, that was just thanks. Well, thank you for thanking us. We're glad to do this. And as a longtime GP user, I'm excited about BC just because there's a lot of pros to using it. All right. Well, thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.